Hello lovely people, welcome back to the farm. I'm just standing here next to the hay bales that we stacked up yesterday. Alright, so we've got 4 bales left from the 5 that we originally got, and what we're doing with these is we're just keeping them dry, keeping them out of the elements out there. We should get snow here in a couple of weeks, and we also needed the room where these hay bales were to move our ducks, chickens, geese, our layers, and then of course our breeders, so that we have a lot easier access to them than where they were before, and this is just going to simplify chores. Let's go over here to where the chickens are, and you'll see that they are very happy. So here's the side of our machine shed where we are a lot closer to the house. It's just right over there. So our chickens, so much happier over here. They've got fresh, well, sort of fresh green grass. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What's your problem, buddy? So we just moved the big red broilers in. That's our rooster that we're going to be using for our experimental breeding project. You'll notice we have Bielefelders and big red broilers all together. And this is the first day that they've been in the same paddock together. So what we're basically doing is letting them go through the whole pecking order and everything. Oh, we do have another, we got sent this as a mystery chick right down here in the lower right hand side of the screen. That is a Bielefelder rooster, not from the same batch of Bielefelders we originally got. He's the same age as the big red broilers, and you'll notice he's a little bit smaller than the hens. And he's much lighter weight than the hens, so, you know, they put on weight much more slowly. Our big red broilers weigh more than our Bielefelders do. What's up, Clyde? Hey, Clyde. He's the king of the poultry yard. And there his queen. Hey, Bonnie. They don't like new stuff, so, you know, they're a little grumpy today, I guess. But overall, the poultry are doing really good. The chickens, you know, they're going through the pecking order thing. They're intermingling. They're not, you know, snubbing each other or isolating one group from the other. So that's nice to see. I think they're going to do just fine. They're going to get into some tussles and fights here today, but overall, they're gonna work it out, and they'll figure out who's on top, who's on the bottom, the whole pecking order and everything. So today we are trying to finish up our bone broth canning from that big 64 quart bone broth boil that I did. Let me show you what we're up to so far. Here's what we've been working on for the last several days. We haven't been doing it constantly. We have another 6 jars of chicken bone broth here. This is what's left over after straining. This is a 64 quart pot. We just rendered this all down to broth, to bone broth. We cooked it down until everything was just falling apart, and then strained the liquid off the top. So what we're going to do with what I'm calling the chicken mash here, what I've decided we're going to do with this is use this as a supplement for our pigs' food. I already took a pail out to them. We're going to take out another pail here. Now we're going to take this out to the pigs. They already enjoyed the first pail that we gave them earlier. Got Honey back there. She's jumping at me, jumping after the pail. She jumped right up there on the trash can where I set it for a second to close the door and just dug in. Like, she got a little taste anyway. It's nice having the chickens and the geese, the farm animal sounds, up closer to our abode. I don't mind it one bit. So the pigs just went to town earlier on this. So let me grab a couple of their bowls and we'll get them fed. Nothing goes to waste. They eat everything. We finally named our pigs, so I'll point them out to you. They're a little busy eating right now, so it'll be a good time as long as they don't have 4 heads in a bowl to kind of point out who they are. So we'll start with the youngest breeding pair. He's our youngest male breeder, formerly known as Oreo. It's his breeding name, so I'll refer to their formerly known as. So this guy, previously known as Oreo, he's now Floki. Oh, and then perfect timing. This little gal, our newest breeding gilt, this is Helga. So Floki, Helga, and then here our larger, older breeding male. This is Bjorn, and his partner, this is Gunhold. So Bjorn and Gunhold. We got our calico cat is out here. She smells the meat. And the bones are perfectly fine for the pigs to eat because they're soft. They've been cooked down to the point where they're not going to have splinters. They're not going to get, a jagged piece of bone stuck in their throat. As long as they chew them, which they can, they'll be just fine. So now I'm going to pull out the carcasses for the next bone broth cook. Last time we did bone broth, what we did was just cook everything down with carrots, onions, garlic, rosemary, thyme, salt, pepper, and I put the carcasses in the bowl whole. Now there's no reason to put them in there whole. In fact, what that does is it creates a lot more space, which means you have to use a lot more water to fill it, which means you're going to get a weaker broth. But I like a more concentrated broth, and so what we're going to do is we're going to break these carcasses down, basically cut them up, and then fit them together in a smaller space, put more in a smaller space so that we have a more concentrated broth. Solidifies a little bit, becomes a jelly almost, and then you just scoop that jelly out, heat it up in a cup, and you can have some nice thick concentrated bone broth before you head out or right after you get back in from doing chores. And that just makes a really kind of nice comforting drink for those early mornings when you're getting up. And basically I could almost replace coffee with this concentrated bone broth. Plus the nutritional quality in it is so much better, so much greater. A nutritious, dense supplement for you in the morning. I really enjoy being able to make some really highly nutritious food. So today what I did was we had a bunch of fat that rose up to the top of our last bone broth cook. And if you know anything about the culinary arts, if you know anything about cooking meat, you know that the fat is where the flavor concentrates in meat. We had this fat that was sitting on top of our last bone broth cook. And what we did with that is we scooped it off, and we did put some of that back into can with the bone broth. But then I took about 3 cups of this fat, maybe 4 cups of this fat, and I put it in a 4-quart soup. 3 quarts of bone broth to about 3 cups of bone broth fat, this chicken fat, basically chicken shawarmas, a quart of meat, a handful of noodles, a couple handfuls of chicken soup noodles. It was a very, very rich, heavy soup that was very filling. So the soup was great. Look at how orangey and yellow that is. That is a very rich broth. There's no added color to that. That is just the broth with the fat on top. So here's what I'm thinking. This time around we're going to do a little different. Not only are we cutting up the chickens so that we can fit more in there, but we're also going to cook it with nothing but chicken and water to start out. And we're going to cook that off. We're going to cook that so that the fat renders and comes to the top. We're going to then get the fat off. We're scooping the fat off the top to set aside. We'll leave some fat in there because it's always nice to have a little bit of fat in your chicken broth. So we're going to scoop that fat off to make shawarmas, chicken shawarmas. Then, and only then, are we going to throw the carrots, onions, garlic, rosemary, thyme, salt, and pepper in our stock pot to continue to cook down and just give our broth a little more flavor. I'm hoping for a good harvest of chicken shawarmas from the carcasses, the fat that's left over on the carcasses, more condensed, higher concentrated bone broth this time that actually solidifies a little bit in the jar. The reason that we have these chicken carcasses, by the way, is because we were parting out a bunch of chickens, thanks to Becky. She did most of the parting. We parted out our chickens to make more room in our freezer, so I think we have something like 100 chicken carcasses, and that's not counting, or that is counting the ones that we've already cooked down. So now I've got even more. We're gonna get on that. Okay, lovely people, we have got almost a full stock pot of chicken. So we filled it about 4/5 full, filled it up about 7/8 full with water. So there's not going to be a lot of space for water down in there. I've got these packed in really tight. So I'm going to get this out to the garage, get it on the stove, and get it filled up with water and get that burner on so that we can start this process, which is going to be a multi-day process now.